Welcome to another episode of the Distributed Data Show, brought to you by DataStax Academy, where we bring you the latest news and interview technical experts to help you succeed at building large-scale distributed systems.
But before we get into the episode, please help us out by taking our quick survey at bit.ly/DDS survey. Thanks, and now for the episode.
Hello, I'm David Gilardi, a technical evangelist, with another episode of the Distributed Data Show. I'm here with Sequoyha Pelletier, and
Hi.
we're gonna dig into support. Let's talk about support and the kind of things that maybe support deals with on a regular basis.
Okay.
Just go right into it.
Okay. So just anything about support?
Anything.
Well, we spend a lot of time chatting with each other, just about what's happening, how's our days going and stuff like that. It's a constant kind of evolution. Each day is just like a totally different experience, right?
Okay.
You're trying to kind of figure out what's going wrong with someone's environment, right? What's going on with the node? What's going on with their application, right? Mm-hmm. And each time a ticket comes in, it's something new. It's kind of like getting a present each time, but you don't quite know.
That's a neat way to look at it,
when
actually.
You open up the present, if it's going to be like, ooh, that's what I wanted, or if your grandma got you some clothes again.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So sometimes you open it up and there's just a whole can of worms. You spend a lot of time digging in, but that's kind of part of the joy of working in support.
Right.
Is you get to experiment on stuff, go in and try and replicate situations, and then see if you can figure out what's going wrong and then get it fixed, or if there's something wrong with the product and you need to go get that fixed.
Okay.
Or if it's just, hey, you didn't do this, go back and do whatever. So it's just a constant just change.
Are there particular types of issues that you guys see a lot, or common issues, things like that?
Yeah, so there's certain sort of I would say categories of things that we run into. So a lot of it will have to do with, say, configuration and tuning, right?
Okay.
So people have things just set to the wrong parameters, or they just go with the defaults out of the box and figure, all right, I'm just gonna put 500 million transactions per second at just bare bones box that's running 4 gigs of RAM, right? So it doesn't usually work out too well. So we spend a lot of time with situations like that, and then there's a lot of times where customers will kind of go at it from a lot of customers that we have these days are just people coming to Cassandra or DSE in general.
Right.
They come from relational background, right? So they come into it and they see, ooh, key space tables. That's
right.
like a database in tables, and I've got a primary key. I'm just going to kind of set it up the way that I had before, and there's documentation over here. I'll get back to that later. Yeah.
Okay.
We just go for it. And then what happens is nodes are just falling over because they didn't do things right, or their application is just super slow because, again, they didn't do things right. They're trying to go in and read from the tables and do joins on the outside, right?
Oh no.
Yeah. So you get into stuff like that. So just the kind of education thing seems to be the biggest hurdle we're at right now, right? So back in the old days, when people were first starting to use Cassandra, they were committing code back, right? They knew the ins and the outs of it. So when they were starting to use it, they had a really good idea of what was going on under the hood.
Right, what Cassandra expects you to do.
Right. But now it's becoming, more mainstream, right? It's the cool thing, right? It's the little skinny sweatpants and stuff like that. All the
I can't
hipster
fit into
stuff.
those, honestly.
I won't even try.
Yeah, I tried once, and they got to my calf, and they just stopped, and that was the thigh, and that was many sizes bigger than. I don't get it.
That's not good.
That's okay. Hey, that's for if anyone wants to do that. No judgment, right? No judgment.
I won't even try because I'm going to end up looking like Lloyd Bridges in Hot Shots Part 2, where he's got those pants that are just too big. Not going to happen. What were we on there?
Oh, yeah.
I just totally.
That's okay, but we were talking about how Cassandra's become more mainstream.
Oh yeah,
right,
yeah.
Right.
So it's more mainstream now. So you get everyone using it that doesn't know the insides and the outs of it. And
Right,
they're coming from
right.
something else, and they're just trying to take the understanding that they have of what they've been used to,
Okay.
and try and apply it. And we get a lot more, just common errors that you wouldn't expect.
Do you see a lot of issues around data modeling?
Oh yeah. We actually have a contest in support.
No way.
Yes, and basically it's to see who can find the largest partition. Okay, so you set up your data model wrong. You're writing a bunch of data at the same partition, right? So whatever that token is, it's just getting pounded. And to date, the largest partition that we found inside of support is 3/4 of a terabyte, right?
Wow.
And it wasn't that long ago that the biggest one we had was about 150 gigs. So it's moving rapidly. So, maybe we'll get to a terabyte this year. We'll see.
Huh.
So, yeah, if people would actually just kind of, before they just start running up systems, one of the biggest things they could do would be to look at our documentation. I mean, that would be a huge help. And then the academy courses, that's a great starting point for anyone, especially the data modeling. I mean,
I have to admit that I'm just going to say that, and I'm probably totally so. We just released the new DSE 6 versions of the 200 courses, I believe, and we have a bunch of us all in them. And so I'm not even gonna say shameless. I'm going for it. Yeah, just watch them because honestly, to go off of that a little bit, the DSE courses, they're free, right? Or the DSA courses, right? They're free. They're there. There is a ton of material. You have exercises. You have. It gets deep into all of the fundamentals and everything. So there we go. That was our advertisement there for DSA.
All right, shameless plug done.
But essentially though, that is a resource that you usually point folks to. So the documentation, DSA courses.
Definitely. So any of that educational stuff that they have, the DSA, the documentation. Also, if they are a customer of ours, I'm not a sales guy or anything like that. I'm not pushing stuff. But if you are bringing up a brand new system that's in development that you want to go live at some point, engaging our services team is probably one of the most crucial things you could do. Okay. I'm not sure how contracting and all that kind of stuff goes.
Right,
I'm sure that, in general, services cost money, but I think in some cases there's some built-in time that they have with every contract. Use that.
Yeah.
Right? Because our guys can come out and they can kind of take a look and at least give you a heads up if things are kind of looking like they're going in the wrong direction.
Okay.
There's lots of instances where people just kind of go with what they think is right. They do their own little bit of testing, and then once it goes live in actual production, they get a higher volume of traffic and they're inspecting and just things go down.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Engage services.
Okay. Now I want to change it a little bit. I'm curious. So, can you give me an idea of the background? I know this is going to be kind of a loaded question, but the background of a lot of the support engineers, and I don't mean individually. I mean do they go through a training regimen, or how do you get built up to get on to that team and become a support engineer?
Okay. Well, obviously you have to have a little bit of previous experience, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking for Linux administration experience because that's important. Any experience with distributed systems in general is always a plus. Ideally, maybe know some Java, because anytime we're looking into what's going on, you might be doing a code dive. So if you can at least kind of read what's going on, that's helpful. But every support engineer that comes on now actually goes through a regimented training program.
Oh, okay.
So we first teach them all the tools that we use internally for supporting the product. Our actual interface. Some tools we use to actually transfer data, but then they go through, actually based off the old Academy videos, of core Cassandra, right? Core operations and data modeling, right? They go through all that stuff, and then with each of those, we actually have it constructed to where instead of just learning how to use it, we break things along the way because they're support.
Okay.
Right.
So you're playing a little chaos monkey kind of just.
Yeah, somewhat. So when they're learning just the basics of DSE, right? They learn it all basically on a single node system, but in there's a few exercises where things just don't work out. Right?
Okay,
DSE
so you set those up that's there. They don't know this is going to happen.
Right.
And you just kind of, look, a fire. Have fun.
And then once they've gone through all that, I have a little, what I call a capstone kind of exercise for them,
that's cool.
where they get 5 servers that they have to install DSE on, get it all working right. Then they bring up another cluster on their own using one of our internal tools.
Okay.
Then they have to start merging things together, and that doesn't work. Right? You have to go through and reconfigure a whole lot of stuff to get it to work.
Right.
And then once they're feeling really confident about themselves and they've got this nice multi-data center cluster up, monitoring with Op Center, they tell me, and I go in behind their back and I break everything. So then they have to go through and figure out what's wrong. And there's different scenarios on each of the different nodes. I'm not going to say what it is in case they're watching this at any point because I don't want them to cheat. But a variety of things. They actually have to dig through the logs, dig through the file systems to figure things out. And once they've actually got it all back up and running again, that's done. They move on to working with another support engineer as a mentor. But they already have at least some interaction with trying to fix.
Okay, so
major
what I'm
fires.
hearing overall, though, is that, generally speaking, when someone comes in to the support team and they're going to be a support engineer, it's not like, hey, go.
No.
It's, there is some time. Because I know going through the courses myself, right? When I first came out of DataStax, I actually went through all those same DSA courses. I spent weeks. It's a lot of material, right? And just doing that. And so it sounds like they're given some time to ramp up and to get into it, to actually use it and figure, and breaking things is a big deal, right? Just launching it and going, good isn't enough, right?
So it makes no point for us to not have something broken and work into it, right?
Okay.
So yeah, it's generally about depending on the actual engineer, right, their competencies,
Okay.
2 weeks to 4 weeks before they ever even look at a ticket.
Okay.
And then from that point, they take the very lowest level tickets to start out.
Right.
Right. And they work with the mentors. That way they can just kind of answer stuff, be productive, learn more as it goes on.
Right.
Develop their skills, and eventually they're kind of on their own, but then they're at the exact same level as everyone else that's working there. So.
Okay. No, that's I didn't know that you guys kind of put them through that particular regimen, right? I figured that they would look at look at DSA and go through some materials. I didn't realize that they actually had to mess with their own clusters and then have you go back there and just kind of and just screw with them.
They really have to mess around with stuff, learn things. My whole goal, because I'm in charge of all that training stuff now, is to try and get each engineer into the fetal position sometime within those 3 weeks crying, because if they've got through that and they're fine, tickets will be okay.
Well, that's actually kind of a fun segue, because I know that we have one time a year, right, where we'll invite other people from within DataStax to actually kind of get into that little apprenticeship, if you will, and got some firsthand experience at some of that, and I was in the fetal position in a couple. Definitely was in the fetal position. And actually, speaking of that, so I guess one thing I guess for our audience, right, as maybe kind of best tips on when you are if you need to go to support, right? You've gone through the documentation, you're just not getting where you need to go, and you need to actually put in technical support, like some best tips to give them as far as the types of things that they need to be putting into a ticket or something like that.
So one of the things I will just kind of address is the fact you mentioned looking through the documentation and stuff like that first. That's always huge. We've got a knowledge base inside of our support portal too. So if you've got a problem, you can go to the knowledge base and you can try and search to see if there's something similar to what you have.
Oh, okay.
You might get the answer right away.
Right.
And that's going to be faster than putting in a ticket and waiting for responses to come back.
Right.
Because especially if it's not, your data center's on fire type issue,
right,
it might take a little bit longer for us to get back to you just because of the way priorities go. But once you've gone through that, right, when you're submitting a ticket, don't just submit it and say, I got this error message.
Right.
Right. The biggest thing you can do to actually help out is context. Context is key. Because generally, I'm not saying always, but generally when something goes wrong and it's just kind of happened, something else has changed somewhere. Right. So having the context about what's been going on, right? Did you, all of a sudden change like the number of connections you have coming in? Did you change the number of nodes? Have you done upgrades recently? Have you flipped a switch somewhere?
Right.
Did
something change, right?
Because that's the biggest thing.
Did your developer release a whole new version of their app or something like that, right?
Things don't generally just work fine and then just stop.
Right.
Unless there's some bug built in that took
Okay,
a
so
while to get
what I'm hearing though is you probably don't want a case where you have like a fully escalated ticket and it says node down. That's probably not giving much context.
You could, but that's not really going to get you the response that you want right away.
Right.
And you may incur, the ire of a support engineer that's just like having a frazzled day. You'll never see it. But they'll be behind the scenes pulling their hair.
I've worked in plenty of support organizations.
Yeah.
It's a hard job, honestly. It's a hard job.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're submitting the ticket, node is down, that's great. But let us know what was happening right before the node went down.
Right.
And have you looked through the logs? Or is there any information there related to it? Submit the logs at the very minimum, because that would be a huge help. Because probably one of the first things that's going to happen is if you send something like that, we're going to ask you what's going on more, and we're going to ask you for logs because the logs have a lot of really good information.
And it's to that point. I mean, for that little stint that I spent there in my a little support apprenticeship, right? I actually got a ticket just like that. That's kind of why I mentioned it. And it's the first thing I ended up doing, right? I just asked, okay, I need the logs, and then we look through the logs and we start figuring out what's going on. We try to do that, so we know at a minimum we're going to need that information most likely.
Did you ask them if they tried turning it off and on again?
No, I didn't actually do that.
We usually do that too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't know that was still a thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always a thing.
All right. So from a standpoint of not just the information, maybe the initial information that someone might provide in a ticket, are there other things that, again, from the best tips standpoint, that you may give, or like, I guess maybe even how to think like a support engineer? Is that something how to get in the mind of what a support engineer might need for you to get the best response out of your ticket?
Right. Okay. So I'll just kind of take this as if I was a support engineer that was not the support engineer, and I'm now the customer. Okay.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, a node goes down. Okay. So the first thing we're going to try and do is figure out if anything has changed. Right. What's actually going on with our entire system here. So for me, that might be pinging other people in my department to see if they've done anything, if they know of anything about it. I mean, the node is down, so it is a very serious situation. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the logs and see what the logs are telling me.
Okay.
So generally, if it's not just some type of a silent failure, there's going to be error messages inside there, and there's going to be stack trace information. Now, if it's something that is, not open source, you're not going to be able to kind of dig through that stuff.
Okay.
But if it's something that's based off of just, the Apache Cassandra and you're getting errors inside of there, one of the things you can do right away is to actually go out and look at the Cassandra GitHub, right? Kind of do a code dive and see what's inside of there if you're comfortable with that. Right. If you're not comfortable with that.
Yeah, what happens if you're not a developer, you don't know how to, that's not your thing.
If you're not comfortable with that, gather up the logs, get as much information as you can about what's going on, and then you kind of have to start taking whatever the particular problem is and trying to kind of investigate the different pieces that are inside there. So it's kind of hard to give you a really good explanation from a customer side because there's going to be a lot of stuff they're not going to have access to.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, utilize the information you get from nodetool because that can actually help you out a lot with certain situations. So net stats and TP stats are really good at kind of telling you, what's going on as far as communication between the nodes, or if your different stages are kind of failing, mutations are dropping, things like that.
Okay.
You can kind of get an idea. I would suggest anyone that is utilizing DSE to really study up on nodetool.
Really? Okay, so nodetool is kind of a big deal when it comes to, say, troubleshooting.
There's a lot of good information that's inside of there you can actually get out of it.
Any particular nodetool commands? Like status is obviously, one that most people would probably know. Are there any other ones in there that are kind of interesting?
It's going to kind of depend on your situation, but obviously the TP stats is probably one of the biggest ones.
Okay.
Info will give you good, just general info about a node, but the easiest thing to probably do that I would suggest to people is just to go and type nodetool.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
Let it spit out everything.
Right, so you can get an idea.
And then run through the help commands. Because if you're having issues with compaction, compaction stats, that'll tell you a lot of information. You kind of see how compactions are running, if things are being held up. And then you can compare that to what's in the logs. So there's, since I started, the nodetool output used to be like that.
Yeah.
Now it's like that.
Right.
And we've got things from, all the different setters and getters and all the different bits of info. And then we even added in the Swiss Java knife, right? Like T-top, so you can actually analyze threads and stuff that are going in there. That's actually been rolled into the product as of, I think it was 5.1.
Okay.
So that's got some really good stuff there. So if threads are hanging and stuff, you can actually utilize that and figure out what's going on a lot easier instead of having to do an entire thread dump and manually just kind of go through and look at it.
Is that available also through nodetool?
It's in, so it's, I can't remember the exact command, but I think it's nodetool like SJK or something like that.
Okay, but it is rolled. It is in there. It is in there. So really, what I'm hearing is that, like, as the overall Swiss Army knife of cool diagnostic information, especially things that might be helpful to like diagnose issues that are going on if you're seeing something in your cluster. Nodetool. I mean, I'm hearing nodetool.
Yeah, it's a huge help. So nodetool, logs, and then any of the other just kind of standard troubleshooting stuff you might have going on. So learn all of your basic Linux tools, top, IOstat, GMstat, just have a good understanding of those. Make sure that you know how to look at the kernel log if you need to in certain situations, just the basic stuff, right? Do a simple little course on Linux troubleshooting, right? Learn that stuff, and then a lot of what you need to figure out inside of DSE, you can kind of get between that and the internal tools of like nodetool and stuff.
Okay.
So.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Sequoyha, for coming to this episode of the Distributed Data Show and giving us all sorts of cool information as far as like the support group and some tips and tricks and that kind of deal. And thank you all again for listening to another episode.
See ya. Welcome to another episode of the Distributed Data Show.
Thank you for joining us again for the Distributed Data Show. We love your feedback, so go to the Distributed Data Show page on DataStax Academy and tell us what you think. You can also find us on the DataStax Academy YouTube channel or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get great podcasts. While you're there, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.